Welcome everyone to a special edition of Tea Time. We're here to talk about something that's going to be a little bit of fun today, and I actually do want to preface this by saying that this is a bit of a meme. I wouldn't take this one super seriously. There is a serious undertone here. It's an important topic. We're talking about the narrative around the game, the morale of the game. Is it all doom and gloom, or is there some hope? But again, I do want to underline this. This is just a little bit of fun here. And by the way, this is where things really get exciting. Both of our contestants here, as it were, actually have like full notes written down. Like this is big.
Like I used to spend all my time in World vs. World, then I spent all my time in PvP, and then I finally spent all my time in raids. Like I've done the world tour of ArenaNet endgame modes, and it gets to a point where eventually your gameplay outpaces the level of stuff they're bringing into the game, and then you're just like, you're sitting next to the window and you look outside that train window and you look at the one next to you and it's moving faster and you're like, I want to be on that one.
It's really hard to get people to share positive experiences. It's very easy to get people to share negative experiences.
I didn't want to bring. I might not bring it up. I'll just kind of like, I have
Bring it up.
screenshots, but I won't bring it. I won't
Bring it up.
We're in. Welcome everyone to a special edition of Tea Time. I like that we have the koi pasta already going. This is certainly going to be a tea time where we do want to be spamming the chat as aggressively as possible. We're here to talk about something that's going to be a little bit of fun today, and I actually do want to preface this by saying that this is a bit of a meme. I wouldn't take this one super seriously. There is a serious undertone here. It's an important topic. We're talking about the narrative around the game, the morale of the game. Is it all doom and gloom, or is there some hope? But again, I do want to underline this. This is just a little bit of fun here to, and actually the best part about this is we're actually going to be expecting the roadmap in the immediate future, very likely to actually be the week following this tea time. So we actually get to see how well this ages very, very quickly. So actually, if you're watching this from the future, then you know what? You should tell us. You should tell us how well everything we said here has actually aged when we go through the roadmap a little bit later on at some point in the future. It's going to be good. But anyway, welcome to the show. This is going to be a formal debate, guys. We're going to have opening statements, 5 minutes unallocated time. I'm moderating this debate. It's very serious. Very, very serious. It's Aizza on Team Doom. There is no hope for Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is over. Guild Wars 2 is dead. Worthless game. Uninstall now. It's going to be defending the honor of Guild Wars 2 on the side of the Angels. It is Emmy who will prevent the doom of Aizza from spreading onto the Guild Wars 2 community. I actually don't know how I want to start this. And by the way, this is where things really get exciting. Both of our contestants here, as it were, actually have like full notes written down. Like this is big. This is big. Like Emmy, I seriously, Emmy messaged me the other day. It's like, oh yeah, I've been preparing all week. I've been preparing all week for this debate. My arguments are ready. I'm ready to annihilate this kid, destroy him, end his career, basically, online. Aizza's got the notes all ready to go, too. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I can maybe go first, since I think I was actually the one who brought up this topic with Teapot. And let me kind of like give a little bit of summary how this kind of idea, I think, kind of started in the first place. So I do think that recently the Doomer side of Guild Wars 2 has definitely been very, very vocal. And I think this is because other games, especially other MMOs on the market, have gotten a lot of publicity and have gotten a lot of new content. So this kind of fostered a lot of like memes and kind of like small commentary that Guild Wars 2 in comparison is not doing that well. However, I do also think that a specific subset of this subset has kind of taken that to the extreme and kind of started spreading negativity around, whether it's through Twitch chat or other forms of social media, that the game is in a very bad spot, when I think that there is a lot of evidence to the contrary. So I think to kind of like start this, I want to like make sure that we're all on the same page with like what exactly is a doomer. And I think it would be really good for all of us to go through and kind of one by one say like whether we agree with this definition or not. But I have it written down that I define a doomer as someone who is overly critical of the game to the point where it's no longer constructive, but it's instead destructive, and it does harm to the game and the game's community and reputation at that. So I think GW2 doomers tend to unjustifiably believe that the game is on a downward trend, despite that there's a lot of evidence that shows the contrary. So a couple of examples of this is that, GW2 has actually released the earnings report for 2022, and that number is much higher than what it was previously. And the developers have been actively saying that the player base has doubled since the release of EOD. There's been an increased frequency of balance patches and general communication from the game in the form of like blog posts, dev diaries, postmortems, Twitch streams, developer interaction in the subreddits, the forums, so on and so forth. So I think, to me, the doomers are the people who kind of disregard this evidence, whether it's because of personal bias or maybe they do have some points that I think are kind of drowned out in kind of the, in some ways, kind of toxic positivity that sometimes surrounds the game. So, any thoughts?
Aizza, your response.
I think your definition of a doomer is probably pretty accurate, but I think it's kind of like a sliding scale. You're gonna have like kind of the low end of doomers that are low effort doomers, we can call them, where they just kind of hop on the bandwagons. People are like, oh, there's no content or whatever released for X number of months or years. Yeah, that's bad. They just hop on the bandwagon. And then you've got the high effort doomers that actually go out there and try to start the points and start the conversations and I guess start the fires and the dramas. I think what you're referring to are really the high effort doomers that are really trying to take down and tear down the whole game. Which is, in most cases, probably not very beneficial unless they want to bring people to their game and try to bring people to their side. But I think, all of those arguments are born in some level of fact, even if they embellish it a little bit. It is born in some level of fact at some point, in some level of disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think actually, while we're on this topic, I completely agree with this idea of sliding scale, because I think a lot of times, I mean, we're kind of seeing it right now in the debate where it's like, oh my God, the game is dying. And then Teapot's painting me as like, no, I'm like a white knight, ain't it? Like forever, like that sort of thing. But in reality, it kind of lays on that sliding scale. It's like the game is not going to completely die, just like the game is likely not going to become this like, I guess like apocalyptic like thing for MMOs that completely reinvents like the wheel, like that sort of thing. So I do think that is very important to bring up. So I do kind of agree with this, but actually I was going to kind of say, when you say high effort, I think there's two types of high effort, right? So there's one where it's high effort because they have legitimate points and they want to spread those points for like, because they genuinely believe it's true. However, I do think there is also high effort doomers that don't have a legitimate point and instead are channeling that effort into tearing down the game because, again, personal biases and personal resentment towards the game. And I think these two sets of high effort doomers are completely different, because I think the high effort doomers where they have legitimate points, I don't think that they should be like, squashed out. I think that legitimacy, it's kind of like you said, there's probably facts in there, even if it's embellished. I think that is really important for the developers to be able to hear, right? That is feedback. That is what social media is for. However, I do think that the second subset of people is the majority of doomers. And that's where I think it's very, very harmful to the game's reputation. And in a lot of ways, I find personal offense to that, because I really like this game. I do content creation for this game. I'm always trying to get new players into the game, into endgame PvE. And it does a lot of times feel like this second subset of high effort doomers is actively pushing against what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely true. Like, to be clear, what we're talking about here is a classic tendency, and I think this actually affects all MMOs. Or actually, no, I'll go further. This affects all, I would say, long-term, live service games, right? Where you invest a lot of your time into one particular video game. It's a big part of your life, a big part of your identity for a prolonged period of time. When you quit that game, you almost don't quit that game. You're still on the subreddit, like, oh yeah, look at this game, look how terrible it is now, right? I made the right decision to quit, right? Yeah, this does happen a lot, where gamers will kind of, in a way, not get what they want out of a game, out of a product, and then they start to move away from it, but they always wish it was something that it isn't, right? Like this, and I think this is a good charitable way to interpret this as well. Like, if you're a doomer, realistically, it's not that you're malicious and you completely hate the game, it's that the game has let you down in some way, right? Or you feel that the game has let you down, it hasn't created enough of this content, or it made this mistake that, in your opinion, made the game worse. And this leads to a really big buildup of resentment, and then, you can't really let go of it because it is hard to let go of it. If you've got something like 10,000 hours in a video game, it's a little bit difficult just to walk away from that entirely, right? I would say it's pretty unhealthy, right? I'm just going to say it. If you do find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh yeah, I hate this game and I basically hate watching and hate playing Guild Wars 2, this is probably a really good time to quit and probably touch grass a little bit. But it is something that happens, and it's a big part of what drives the motivation here, I think, is the game not being what you want it to be. And, I've definitely been there, done that. Like, the time where I've been most frustrated with the game was essentially when there was essentially zero endgame content being added to Guild Wars 2. The only thing that was being added was basically story content, which wasn't really of great interest to me. But you know what? I just did the big brain play. I quit. I didn't play because the game was offering me nothing, and therefore I was wasting my time. So I went somewhere else. That's what you should do. What you shouldn't do is watch every single stream and shit on the game permanently, write loads of YouTube comments saying that the game is dead, and also post on the Guild Wars 2 subreddit that the game is dead in every single thread. That is where you don't want to be. That's the hell zone. That's the true doom zone in that regard. But I think that kind of covers the motivations and what's going on here. I actually really want to dig into kind of like looking at what's going on here with the game, because I think Guild Wars 2 has had a very interesting history. It's had a very turbulent history, I would say, over the past few years. And here's the thing. Like, I love ad revenue, right? And I want the opportunity to make a video that says, should you play Guild Wars 2 in 2023? But you know what? There's a reason why I haven't done that. The reason why I haven't done that is because I don't feel like it would actually be a somewhat appropriate thing to do, because the future of the game is not exactly uncertain, but we haven't seen the plans that ArenaNet has been laying out for a while now, for around 2 years, come to fruition. Right? And I think this is also a big part of this entire discussion. There's always been a degree of uncertainty about the game's future, right? It's always been very up in the air. Is it going to be raids? Is it going to be strikes? Are we going to get consistent content now with Ender Dragons? What's the plan? Is there another fractal? Okay, we're getting balance patches now. That's pretty exciting, right? But, alliances 5 years ago, right? That there's been this degree of uncertainty that I think actually really breeds this doomer attitude. I think uncertainty is actually really bad. And I think you can see this because even though we didn't have much content for a while, right, during the Seasons of the Dragons arc, like that kind of thing, there was certainty. There was like, okay, this is happening every single week. And even though there wasn't much going on, I think just something happening really soothed people, and the morale in the community really improved over time. I think that's been the case after Ender Dragons as well, even though there hasn't really been a lot of content releases, because there's been like a plan, right? People have been a little bit happier. And I think that if ArenaNet continue to deliver that, that's where I think things can, the narrative can really shift on the game. But again, the point of what I was getting at here was that it's really difficult to make judgment calls, because ArenaNet have been saying a lot of really good things, I think, but now they actually have to deliver on it, right? And I think there's been a lot of this history throughout the game that's led to some resentment from ex-players, right? Stuff like 6 wings a year, that's a classic claim right there. 6 raid wings a year. I like that. I like that energy right there. Maybe it didn't exactly turn out so well.
That's exactly it. It's the history, and that's what when I take a look at the last 3-4 years of when I played. You look at these promises that they make, and you look at everything that they say that they're going to bring into the game, and their history is showing there's the website right there, thefurnacetaken.com in chat. All these things that they say that they're bringing into the game, and this is the future of whatever game mode, and then it just gets dropped. It starts out with dungeons being the original end game and being dropped, and then you get fractals, and they're technically maybe not dropped, but when's the last fractal we've had? It's been a really long time. Raids is another example, DRMs. So it's like, when do we hit the level when strikes becomes that next thing? And we have to sit here in the dark wondering, okay, what's next? That's kind of like the big issue with not having a roadmap, is they've shown a history of dropping content and not actually continuing things. And then even if they bring new items into the game, they brought strike missions in, they've done well. That when they introduce strike missions, they do well. But the problem is people now have to adapt to an entirely new system. They have to go to an entirely new map to get to those instances, deal with entirely new currencies that are convoluted and confusing, even though now they've kind of simplified it. But every time they bring in something new like this, we have to learn new things, which is a positive and a negative. And it's kind of exhausting. We already have good systems. Just add more to them.
So I think that's a really good point, and I kind of want to like split this into two discussions. So one is kind of like the idea of introducing new systems into the game, and this being a little bit, especially confusing for newer players. So I think that's kind of like point number one. Point number two is kind of like the history of the game, like how the game has approached certain topics in the past and whether or not they've dropped it or continued it. So kind of like I want to start at number two because that was actually the one that was brought up first. I think while it is fair to judge a company by its history, I think we can all agree that there's been some pretty major leadership changes within the company in the past 2 years or so. So I do think that while looking at the history is relevant in some ways, I also think that it's not fair to say that it's going to continue in the same direction when there's new people at the lead, when they have kind of actively demonstrated, at least in the past few months, that they are attempting to implement a change. Obviously, Rome was not built in a day, so we can't expect them to come out with everything in like the span of like 1 to 2 months. But I think over the course of 1 to 2 years, they have demonstrated at least a couple of things that they're not intending on dropping. So since we kind of brought it up, like well-versus-world alliances is an example, right? Like first came up like 5 years ago, something like that. They kind of dropped it, radio silence about it for the next few years. But in the past, I think less than a year, we've had, I think, 2 different betas for it. They've had post-mortem discussions on it. So I think this is, at least in terms of alliances, obviously it's not done. I think a lot of people are on the side of like, if it's not done, I don't care yet. Because at the end of the day, all of this other stuff is just fluff, which, you know what? Understandable. Have a nice day. But on the other side, on the other side, I think it's reasonable to look at that and think, okay, this is evidence that they are trying to change it. So I think that's kind of like number one. Another example is, again, like strike missions and stuff, right? So I agree. Strike missions is a completely different system, even though fundamentally it's the same thing. It's just individual bosses instead of entire raid wings. But they have released a plan with EOD where they said they were going to put out 4 normal modes, and then they're going to release the CMs incrementally over time. And they did that, right? So that's like an example where they put out a roadmap and then they actually followed up on it. It's like, again, it's not the, like, you know, it's not like they're doing this for every single thing, because they did also say they were going to put out a roadmap pretty early into the year, and that hasn't happened yet. But at the same time, I also don't think that that should be the defining factor of like, oh, ANET's like not following up with what they're saying and stuff, because that's just one example. So yeah. Anyways, okay. So that was like kind of like number one. And then number two is like the different systems for Guild Wars 2. I think this is also, again, due to a lot of internal leadership changes. Like they probably just thought that this new system would have been better than the old one. But I will also completely agree this is really bad for the new player experience, because I do a lot of new player trainings and stuff. And one of the most common questions I get is, what is the difference between strikes and raids? And theoretically, the only difference between them is that one of them is a single boss and then the others are multiple bosses. So I do think that like all of this like currency stuff and wallet bloat and all that sort of thing is not good for the game. But I would also prefer them to do experimentation to see what is financially viable for them than for them to not do anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially on that last point, I think I'd agree. They should find out what's viable for them. If that means it's, 1 strike and 1 raid wing and 1 fractal, like every other year, that's fine. But we need to have some form of plan and something to look forward to. Right now, let's be honest, the only thing we have to look forward to is them saying when EOD released that season 6 is coming. That's it. What's the other bit of content that they've announced? Nothing. We know that there's going to be some holiday events coming, but that's really it. We don't know, is there going to be more strikes? We hope so. We think so, but we don't know. Is there going to be another fractal? There's people theory crafting and, data mining maps that could be used for certain things, but there's maps that have been hanging around for years that we see that they exist, but there's nothing done with them. So the issue is, yeah, they look like they're improving, but that improvement for 1 year right after an expansion when they have a lot of hype means very little if they don't continue that and continue to work on it. And, we're sitting here 2 weeks into February with no idea of what's even coming for 2023, while many of the other games on the market have already told people what's coming for at least the first half of the year, if not the entire year.
I do think, okay, so listening to this, I do think that there's two sort of hyperfixations that kind of miss the bigger picture. So one is that I think the roadmap in and of itself really should not have as much weight as it does right now. I think a lot of the times when people hear like, oh, they're like releasing a roadmap, they think that there's going to be all of these new shiny features that are like expansion defining and all of that kind of stuff, when it could just be as simple as, okay, for this month, we're going to be focusing on polish. For this month, we're going to be focusing on balance. For this month, we're going to be focusing on living world, so on and so forth. And I think this is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. It's like, because the community has hyped up this roadmap to this point, we really don't have a choice but to be let down by like the next roadmap, right? Like, unless they announce like, oh yeah, we already have 2 raid wings that are fully fleshed out and like everything is like ready to go. Ooh. And we have voice acting and we have like 6 different bosses with all of their skins. It's not going to be enough to satisfy people. You know, it's like at this point, it has already become to the point where I don't think anything that ArenaNet can do that is reasonable will live up to the expectations that have kind of been pasted on it. And I think that is a completely self-inflicted thing that the community has done to itself. Ooh. So that's kind of like number one. And then I think number 2 is that I think there's a lot of fixation right now about endgame PvE. I think this is kind of like, especially where a lot of like Twitch streamers and YouTubers kind of have a problem, is that we define the health of the game based off of the specific type of content that we want, which is endgame PvE. But I feel like the game goes larger than that, right? It's like, what about, I think a lot of people only care about story. So for them, when they hear that there's going to be a new Living World 6, they're going to be very, very happy about that. And then there's also a lot of people who play the game for like fashion and stuff. So when they see gem story updates, they think, wow, this is content and stuff. Or if you see people, even like with World vs. World PvP, those game modes are a little bit on the neglected side. But still, I think right now our focus is way too narrow. And judging the game only by the amount of endgame PvE content that it releases is not a good metric to measure whether or not the game is doing well.
I agree with you. Yeah, but what has, you've had Alliance betas for how long, and what's coming to PvP? And when is Living World Season 6 coming out?
I mean, okay, look, I feel like we're kind of, this is a bit of a straw man right now. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't have already released this. I'm saying that they already said that a roadmap is coming out and that it will likely have certain topics on it. However, I also don't think that judging the game only by this one specific thing, which is endgame PvE, is the way to go.
Well, right? I think that's Aizza's point, though. I don't think Aizza is doing that. And actually, I don't think that's entirely true. Obviously, like, you know, people are going to advocate for the type of content they care about, but I think people actually are mostly judging the game off like how much content is being released flat, not actually just like the endgame PvE stuff. Obviously, people who are interested in that are going to say like, hey, where are my strike missions? But actually, no, I actually think that a lot of the complaints are actually about like, where is season 6? Like, where is the next story update? Where is the next map? I think these are the things you hear a lot about. Of course, yeah, in our neck of the woods, people are going to talk about the raids and stuff like that and strike missions. But actually, I think this is actually not a complaint that's localized just to this area. I think this is actually much more general overall. I think you'll find plenty of story doomers, plenty of PvP and alliance doomers, right? I think you'll find them everywhere, actually.
I will speak up on behalf of Guild Wars and say, if they are going to continue to do these regular balance updates that they've been doing, and I haven't, I've been removed from the game, so I don't know what the quality of the balance is, but I know the frequency because I'm still in Discords and see it talked about. That is kind of leaning into the realm of content for PvP-based game modes, because it does kind of change how it's interacted. But you would like to see some additional something like alliances if they, whenever that eventually comes out, PvP, it'd be pretty great to get a new map, or maybe elaborate on Stronghold or something similar to Stronghold or something else to give them a little bit more than just changing up the balance. But you can kind of lean on balance for the PvP based game modes a little bit and, say, hey, that is them giving, attention and elaborating on those game modes. And I will agree with you that, like, yeah, I mean, all 3 of us here, well, maybe not Teapot, he plays a lot of the stuff pretty equally, but all 3 of us here are mostly raid and strike focused for the most part. The if they were to bring in Wing 8, if the roadmap comes out on Tuesday and they say Wing 8 is coming into the game, I download the game Tuesday evening. Like I Wing 8 would bring me back, and I would probably not be incredibly all on the hopium train, but like if that is kind of where my mentality lies. But I also think that they do need to have something of substance. Say, hey, season 6 is going to come in the first half of the year. Something as bland and as open as that is enough, because then it gives us something to grasp onto.
And I also think that community management is really important here. It's certainly true that the Guild Wars 2 community has a big tendency to overhype, but actually I think placing that entirely on the players, I think is actually extremely unfair. Realistically, ArenaNet could have prevented the overhype easily, actually, if they just actually managed the community and said, hey, this is what you should be expecting. Because realistically, we actually don't know. That's kind of weird, right? You know, Aizza was referencing some of the roadmaps. I think the one that actually really stood out to me was actually the World of Warcraft Dragonflight roadmap, which is literally nearly a year, right? And it's talking about the next couple of raids being added to the game. And oh yes, not just raids, guys, the story updates, the additional dungeon updates, which would be analogous to fractals, for example, in Guild Wars 2. Yeah, this is how you manage expectations. And I actually think ArenaNet does a very, very poor job of this historically, and kind of continues to do so. I really hope that we see that improve. Hey, hopefully that improves with the upcoming roadmap. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a vision, because again, ArenaNet have alluded to this. They said, hey, we're looking forward to share our vision of the future with you. That was the last post of 2022, right? But managing expectations is really, really important. And here's the thing. I don't think it actually needs to be like an Omega hyper roadmap. I think as long as players know what's coming, know what they can expect, even if it isn't all they hoped and dreamed for, I think that's okay. I don't think people are going to go berserk about that, right? You know, you might have a bit of grumbling. I mean, when isn't there a bit of grumbling, right? There always will be. But I think community management is extremely important. Yes, it's a very, you know, the narrative, as always, is going to be dictated by a small group of players. There aren't that many people, relatively speaking, who use Reddit, who use Twitter, who use Facebook, whatever, right? Like, social media is of course the minority, but the narrative around a game is important, because that's what your potential customers see in other games, right? Like the WoW players looking at Guild Wars 2, the Final Fantasy players looking at Guild Wars 2, they see the narrative that is dictated by the subreddit, by YouTube, by Twitch, by Twitter, whatever, right? That's what they get to see. And that is actually something that I do think Arena needs to do a much better job of controlling overall. And you do that by setting expectations and hopefully delivering on those expectations.
I want to say that I completely agree with this. I'm not saying that ArenaNet is like perfect with their community management and everything, but I also don't think that it's entirely fair to say that they haven't been doing at least a little bit of community management. Again, I'm just going to bring up the balance patches here as a very minor example, but they have been saying, okay, we're going to release this balance, or we're going to release this stream for the balance patch 2 weeks in advance, and then we're going to listen to feedback. They have actually reverted changes based on the feedback, and then they deliver the balance patches. This is only just one example in which they are doing community management for a pretty small subset of the game, admittedly, but at the same time, it is significantly better than what it used to be in the past 5 years or so. So I think that's like kind of like point number one that I want to bring up. And then I think the second part is, I'm not saying that like, you know, the community is responsible for like all of the overhype, because I agree a lot of that can be mitigated. However, I do think that historically the player base has looked at content releases and then kind of expressed a lot of disappointment that it wasn't up to their standards. I think this is something that has happened very, very often, even when they were, I think actually a good example is, again, the balance patches and stuff. In balance patches, I think a lot of people were expecting certain things to be nerfed, certain things to be buffed, certain things to like, you know, get reworked or changes and all of that kind of stuff. And even with the pretty detailed balance patches, a lot of people weren't entirely happy with them. And I think this is, it's a very small symptom of like the larger problem, but I think this happens everywhere. And I think it especially happens in regards to content. So when I'm saying that the community is definitely overhyping this next roadmap, it's more in the sense that if they had if they had released this roadmap at the beginning of 2023 versus where it is right now, even if it didn't have that much content in the first place, I think the backlash would have been equally as bad.
You know, yeah, I really think you're not wrong there. And yeah, I you know, I'm trying to keep things a little spicy here. I'm gonna debate both of you, right? I'm just gonna start randomly attacking both of you. It's gonna be really good. I'm just gonna throw in like an ad hominem in there. I'm just gonna say, you know what? How about fuck you, right? Like that's gonna be my argument right there.
Guys, this whole week, Emmy and I have been throwing fighting emotes at each other.
No,
We've been cursing each other out in DMs.
I can only stop it. I mean, literally every
I'm
time
kidding,
I
I'm kidding.
Let me literally go to Teapot stream and like pull out the receipts. Every time I even just say, hi Teapot, hi chat, Teapot friend, like I always do. The first thing out of Teapot's mouth is, are you ready for the Doom debate this weekend where you and Aizza are gonna beat each other up? And I'm like, literally the next like 5 minutes in chat, I'm like typing up paragraphs saying, no, me and Aizza, we're like Bing Chiling. We're gonna bring both really, really good points to the debate that are gonna be really relevant to like the future of this game and everything. And then when am I just like chopped liver or something?
So here's the thing that I kind of want to bring into this here a little bit. I absolutely agree that people are going to be disappointed and actually respond quite negatively to the balance patches and so on, even when they are solid. And I definitely agree, actually. And this is where I definitely, overall, I would say lean towards the optimist on this. I think ArenaNet has actually been doing a great job of getting some proper work done and getting this iterative process where they're going to commit and get it done, especially with these balance patches. I'm loving the live streams, of course, with CMC and Roy. I love to see Roy die to the Guardian NPC in the PvP lobby. It's just so good. That was the highlight of my week, and that's absolutely fantastic. But when we say something like, oh yeah, you know, when ArenaNet do this, they get negative response, it really pains me to say this because I actually do think ArenaNet are doing a good job overall actually right now. I think they're moving in the right direction. I just think they've got to eat that because in my opinion, yeah, there are a lot of people who feel consistently let down by the company and by the game historically. Things are turning up. I think morale is actually overall improving. I mean, look, let's be honest. I think morale is way better than it was, say, in 2017, right? Or kind of 2019, actually, rather. It's way better than that back then. But yeah, this is a long process. I mean, I think it's going to take an incredibly long time for ArenaNet to really rebuild that trust, right? And that's why I really think that Season 6, this is so important because this is where we get to see what does Guild Wars 2 look like when it's run by Grouch, right? That's when we actually get to see this leadership in play. I think it's incredibly important that ArenaNet deliver on this vision and actually really show some serious consistency because that's how they're going to rebuild trust in the community, right? Is by really nailing this down and doing what they got to do. And yeah, that is going to mean they're going to have to eat, you know, some criticism. They're going to have to muscle through this. Because yeah, in my opinion, especially on I think the balance is a really good example. I think it will take them years to actually fix all of the actual problems with the game, right? Because, I mean, I don't want to say this, you know, let's get a little spicy. Let's be honest, guys. The balance of the game has been like systematically eviscerated over time pretty much. And only now it's being repaired, right? Like it's been damaged significantly over time, or rather the design of the game, not so much the balance. The balance is actually pretty good, but the design of the game has been compromised, leading to some kind of like major issues. And that's going to take a long time to actually repair.
Yeah. I mean, the game now and the balance now, or like basically anytime after End of Dragon's released, would be completely foreign from a kind of stylistic standpoint to anyone who played it prior to EOD. If they weren't paying attention. If you uninstalled in 2021, reinstalled last year, and tried to play the same things that you played then, you're going to fall flat on your face because the entire system's completely flipped upside down. Whether that's good or bad depends on your opinion. You know, some people are going to be extreme one way or the other and say, oh, the new balance is amazing, I love it. Some people are going to say the exact opposite and say this new balance is terrible, I'm uninstalling, screw this. So it's going to take a long time for them to find that. And there probably is no such thing as perfect balance in any game. Whether that be an MMO, whether it be an FPS, a MOBA, anything, there's probably no such thing as perfect balance ever. Someone's going to be mad somewhere at some point. You just kind of have to pick your battles as ArenaNet and figure out, okay, who are we going to piss off the most? And who are we okay with pissing off the most? Who do we need to prioritize here, essentially?
Oh man, I need to figure out where we need to go here. We've got to navigate back into the mix here.
I have one that I've been wanting to bring up, but it's going to be a completely different topic. So if you guys are
down
okay.
a path.
So let me give you guys some context. So some of you guys might know that I've recently been trying to conduct a survey on, in general, the patterns between players, how long they've been playing, the types of content that they play, and how much money they spend on the game. And this is because historically, in a lot of the tea times that I bring up, is that certain players are more financially viable to cater to than other players. And while I always had at least a surface level understanding of this just from hearsay and stuff, I wanted to conduct at least a somewhat statistically rigorous study to see if I actually had any data points that could back up what I'm saying. And I haven't completely sanitized the data. There's like obviously a lot of variation in here, but let me just kind of bring this up and we can maybe see where this snowballs and takes us. In general, the endgame PvE content, or like those players, are the least financially viable people to cater to, because there is a very, very severe drop-off in how much money they spend after about 1,000 hours into the game. Meaning that most of the money spent from players are from new players. And if you think about it, this makes sense, right? Because when you first start the game, you have to buy the expansions. You're probably going to be buying some, like, new character slots. You're going to be buying a lot of QOL, all of this stuff. So the new players are very, very financially, viable to cater to because they have open wallets and they have a lot of things to purchase. However, once you kind of reach past a certain threshold, it starts dropping off pretty heavily. In other words, it kind of just starts like, what is it called? Like plateau. It starts plateauing. I think after a certain point in the game, you don't really spend that much money on it. So can this necessarily be like, aligned with the discussion of like, is the end game super viable to, create this kind of content for if they aren't generating as much revenue as focusing on newer players? I'm going to leave this very open-ended because I have my own interpretations of it, but I want to see what you guys think, because I will say kind of like another like little drop of information is that people that associate with the Doomer community, in other words, people that have invested a lot of time, are very vocally negative about the game, are also amongst the lowest spenders of the game. I know this because I tracked when they submitted their survey responses, and on average, they spent only about $130 outside of the expansions, whereas compared to the statistically average, in other words, just open world players that have, played a decent amount of the game, 1,000 to 2,000 hours, on average spend about $600 on the game.
And it's definitely true.
So,
I mean,
when you say, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, this is absolutely true. There's a reason why not every single game is like a hyper hardcore raid simulator or PvP game, because that's not what makes money. What makes money is absolutely entry level, very, very casual friendly content. I don't think that's not a surprise to anyone. I think that's exactly what you'd expect. I mean, but
the
thing is,
the longevity.
No, you know what? No, I think this is a complete statistical fact. The longevity of the game, I think, is irrelevant. If every single raid player and PvP player quit the game, I don't think it would make a tiny bit of difference, actually, whatsoever. However, I think it's also really important. That doesn't mean those players don't matter. That doesn't mean that they're irrelevant. And you want to be really careful because you don't want to imply that. Those are still important players. And can they expect to get as much attention, as much content as the main demographic of the game? Of course not, right? That would be ridiculous. That would be an insane position to hold. But I do think that, players of all different types, of all different categories, are absolutely important, and at least deserve something, right? And deliver value in their own way, right? Because it's a lot of these veteran players who might not be spending as much money, but they will be engaging in essentially promoting the game to an extent, right? Like the social media conversations, right? Content creation and so on. That does have value, right? To an extent. At least. So okay. I think that's
so I also want to like qualify here, because I wanted to first hear you guys' thoughts before I put my own, because I didn't want to bias you guys. So I actually completely agree with this. I think financially newer players are the people that they're going to milk a lot of money from, right? But how do you get new players into the game? How do you generate the hype so that the game's word spreads around? How do you get people to actually think, wow, this game is even worth playing because it has a feature? A lot of that is given to us by veteran PvE players, right? Like people who write the guides, who make the website. So like Hardstuck, Snow Crows, Discretize, all of these like big guilds and everything, right? So they're obviously providing a lot of value to the game that is not directly quantifiable in terms of money. However, I think there's like a really, really big however that I want to tack onto here. The people that are creating those resources are not Doomers. This is like the big point that I want to get to, right? Is like the people who are actively investing their time into the game, even though they're not necessarily investing money, they are still doing things in benefit for the game so that the game can continue to grow. So in other words, even though they aren't financially or offering financial incentives to the game, they are providing a lot of community and social incentives. My big point that I want to make here is that I think the specific subset of the community where they are overly critical of the game and also don't financially support the game are not providing anything. Like, I think this is like the actual point. It's like you say that most of these players should have value, which I agree. But I think the specific subset of people who don't spend money, who don't go out of their way to help other people, who don't provide a good narrative around the game, who can't let go of their personal biases, I actually don't think that they offer any value to the game at all.
But I don't think anyone's argued in the affirmative to that, right? At all. Let me refocus this a little bit here. Because, I mean, I think that what's gone here is that we're talking about the wrong topic. We're talking about, like, is it worth even trying to communicate with these people, right? And in my opinion, this is a silly discussion because the way we've defined it, we've literally defined Doomers to be useless. Like, so we're saying, aha, look, they're useless. Well, yeah, of course, right? But that's not interesting at all, right? Like, what's interesting, I think, is this communication element, is this community management element. Why has this happened? Why do people end up this way? I think that's a much more interesting discussion here that can actually have some actionable response. Because, yeah, like, by definition, the conclusion we're going to come to is these people are totally useless. Because, yeah, and are basically a detriment to the game. Of course, yeah, obviously. But I do think it is worth talking about the fact that that there are ways that we as the community and ArenaNet can prevent this from happening, right?
Okay.
I don't think Doomers, you might say, oh, Doomers are irrational, right? You're coming at this from a very logical perspective. And, you know, you're definitely not wrong in this regard, right? Like, the way, if you're really dooming about the game, it's probably not super rational, let's be honest here, right? Like, you're probably slightly unhinged at the very little, right? Okay, if you're dumping all this time and emotional energy into a game that you hate and don't play, yeah, okay, probably not exactly the healthiest thing in the universe to be doing.
Is this a personal attack, Teapot?
Yeah. I've joined the debate. Okay, I'm in. Yeah, of course, right? That's obviously not very useful. But again, this isn't the point. Like, this is not how things work. If everyone was a completely rational actor, there wouldn't be any Doomers. That's not how it works. However, there are absolutely reasons why people have become Doomers, right? We talked about this before. It's the lack of consistency, lack of transparency, multiple changes in directions, like a zillion different game directors, right? Uncertainty with what the hell's going on, right? This is what actually causes this, right? And that is the conversation here, right? It's the actionability of that and what can be done and within a reasonable degree that's within ArenaNet's influence, right?
I think,
so basically what causes someone to go from spending basically all day every day on the game, doing stuff all around the game, being in multiple Twitch chats, to uninstalling the game like I did over the last year, basically. That's what we're really trying to get down to.
I think, okay, I'm going to push back on this a little bit because the reason why I brought up the finances is because I do think that this has a pretty major impact on why these Doomers became a thing, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you know, if a specific part of the community is not financially viable to cater to, then if they're under a leadership that doesn't care about those people, then they're not. Right. I think this is actually a core part of the discussion. It's because these people in at least the profits, like, I don't know, profit CEOs of like NCSoft, when they look at this community, they see, okay, they're not giving us any money. Let's not give them anything. Right. I do think that is a major reason why, at least pre-EOD, there was almost no content whatsoever for endgame PvE. Like, you cannot tell me that it did not have to do with like the amount of money that they.
I think it's way more. That sounds way more combative than it actually is. I don't like the framing of that. Like, that's not the direction it goes. Right? The way you've just framed it sounds like the Doomers stopped paying, and ArenaNet were like, oh look, they stopped paying. Now they don't get anything. No, I don't think that's how it was. I think it's actually before that. It's more like, this isn't really super working out financially. Looks like we probably can't dedicate that much content. I think it's way softer, way
It's
more
softer.
neutral.
Yes,
right?
this is true. I am definitely
And it's
framing it
a
very
slow
negatively.
change too. It's like
Yeah.
they slowly
But at
take
the
stuff off
end-
the table.
It's not like fuck you, right? No, it's
Yeah,
never
I
like
know,
that.
I completely agree with that. Maybe the way I put it out was incorrect. But I think the point that I'm trying to make, though, is that money is a really, really big, important conversation in this topic. And again, the reason why I brought this up is because there's obviously a lot of value that you can add to the game that is not money. Right. And what I want to talk about is how do we add value to the game that is not money, that incentivizes the game to cater to these individuals more. That's more along the lines of like where I wanted to go. But I think also another really big thing that I want to add here is that once again, there's a sliding scale to this, right? Like obviously there are some people that are extreme doomers and they like just want the game to die for like literally no rational reason whatsoever. And then there's the more rational people who have legitimate points and that, you know, are worth listening to. And then you have people on the other side that, you know, they recognize those rational points, but at the same time, they think the game is on an upward trajectory. What I'm trying to get at here is that there's a major sliding scale. And I'm not saying that, like, you know, this subset of community, like, are completely irrational. We should not listen to them at all. I want to make that really clear because I can already see people, like, in even just the Twitch chat where they're like, okay, well, the game hasn't released content for, like, 10 years and everything. Why should I spend, like, even a single dollar?
True.
Right? It's like,
Yes.
I'm not talking about, like, super, like, specific niche endgame people. I'm just saying the general trend. That
Talking
is
about
all.
Aizza. Call Aizza out. Flame him.
No, I like
Yeah.
Aizza.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes.
I
So
mean,
anyway,
like it's to go from a player. Like I used to spend all my time in World vs. World, then I spent all my time in PvP, and then I finally spent all my time in raids. Like I've done the world tour of ArenaNet endgame modes, and it gets to a point where eventually your gameplay outpaces the level of stuff they're bringing into the game, and then you're just like you're sitting next to the window and you look outside that train window and you look at the one next to you and it's moving faster and you're like, I want to be on that one, and you go and you get a taste of another game, and they're keeping up with all those things. And I know it's not a fair comparison because no two game companies are the same. No two, you know, to go back to this word just as an excuse, but roadmap is the same. Like you can't perfectly say that, you know, comparing Guild Wars to WoW or Final Fantasy or, you know, New World or Lost Ark or whatever is a perfect comparison because they're not the same game. They're not the same combat system. They all play completely different. But it's hard when you get to a point where you feel like you've done everything you want to do in the game and other games are giving you more of that same thing you want to do. There's no actionable reason for you to stay in the game, especially when ArenaNet gives you the easy way out by saying you will have the best in slot gear no matter what. You can walk away from this game for as long as you want. And if you come back, you're still going to be fine, which is inherently a positive and a negative thing. ArenaNet gave me the easy way to walk away. Final Fantasy doesn't. I have to keep up with a gear grind if I want to keep playing, or I'm going to have a pretty serious grind if I take 6, 9, 12 months off and come back to, you know, get back into the rhythm of things. ArenaNet, I could download Guild Wars 2 today. I just got to learn whatever new rotation there is, maybe tweak some gear, but I've got full legendary. I'm ready to go within an hour, which is, you know, a good and a bad thing. They've cracked open the door to walk away. And they need to make sure that they keep that crack as small as possible. And the way they do that is by providing either content or promises for the future or something that's actually concrete that gives you a reason to stay and a reason to say, yeah, you know, I see myself playing this game. And I just don't feel like they've done that for a lot of people for really kind of years now.
Well, this is actually just, I mean, isn't this actually a problem with the game being well designed? Like, is that not what we're complaining about here? The game is like not horribly designed to like lock you in forever. And as a result of that, like it's easy to take a break.
Well, that's why I said it's a positive and a negative thing. Some people love that. Some people don't like it.
I'll get in here because I get what Aizza is trying to get at. Because, like, I agree. I think it's a really good thing that you can walk away from the game. What I think Aizza is trying to say is the game needs more stuff to have people come back. Right. So it's like you use the door analogy, right? That you have like a path for people to leave, but ideally you want to keep that door open so that they can also come back. So I completely understand that. And this is why I want to like keep on saying it's like I'm not just like a ArenaNet White Knight and everything, because I actually completely agree with this. Like, I know there are some people who have left the game, like, 1 to 2 years ago, and then they came back, and then when they saw Harvest Temple, they were like super hyped, right? So that was like an example in which that door was now a two-way street, right? It's like they heard about this Harvest Temple challenge mode, they heard it was really difficult, and they wanted to really sink their teeth into it. So then they came back, right? I think that is really important. But I think at the same time, though, I also think to not look at the content that has been released in the past, like, since EOD has been released, is also a little bit bad faith, isn't it? I think they have provided quite a few opportunities for people to come back to the game. Obviously, not as much as, other games might, right? Just because they have a more defined, I think, just in general development style, right? It's like if you have a vertical gear grind, all you have to do is add another like layer on top of that vertical grind, right? But in this case, if it's horizontal, you just have to add more like new content. You have to kind of keep on like providing things that is not as easy as just increasing the number on your gear stat. It's like, so the point here that I'm trying to make though is that, yeah, in the past year we haven't really had that much, but in the past year we haven't had that much new content, but we've had quite a bit of the other stuff. Again, we're going to bring up like the balance patches, the polish, all of that kind of stuff, the world versus world beta, so on and so forth. So I think they are slowly cracking open that door more and more, which I think is a very, very good thing.
I have numbers for you then, if you want to talk about the stuff that they brought. So I admittedly did this research like 2 nights ago, so I might have missed a thing or two, so correct me if I did.
Professional.
But for Guild Wars 2, this is since End of Dragons released and since the last Final Fantasy expansion, which was December, so 2 months before End of Dragon. I felt like that was a pretty fair timeline to compare. So you look at that, since End of Dragons release, Guild Wars added CMs to their 4 EOD strikes that they released, which it's pretty well known that the CMs are either completely or mostly developed at the moment that they release the normal modes. Then they added OLC and OLC CM. I will say OLC was good. I reinstalled to play it. I love the new mechanic they brought in with CCing, being able to, adjust how you play the fight and how the mechanics work. But then they re-released 9-year-old story content. They re-released 9-year-old holiday content. They instanced some Marionette, Dragonstorm, Nightmare Tower, that kind of stuff. They've done like 5 or 6 balance updates, so pretty good balance progression there. In that same time span, for a game like Final Fantasy, they've introduced 4 new raid bosses, 2 new trial bosses, which is like a strike, 2 new alliance raids, which is a 24-player raid with 3 bosses in it or more, 2 new ultimate trials, which are like HTCM, 30 new main story quests, completely new, 10 new side story quests, a new PvP map, new holiday events, not old ones, and had 3 balance updates. So if you compare basically a year from those 2 games, that's why you get someone like me who is a doomer and is looking at it and it's like, why would I play something that all they did was add some difficulty modes and 1 new fight, no new story after the expansion, not counting the actual expansion itself for either game here. No new story, no new events for holidays, no new quests or anything like that. When I've got this other game that introduces a ton of new content, and to your point earlier, financially, $130 a year is basically the same amount I pay for my Final Fantasy sub fee.
I think, okay, so there's going to be there's a lot of things to unpack here. And I want to preface this by saying that I do really, really respect that Final Fantasy XIV respects its endgame players that much. And speaking as someone who has been part of speedrunners and has been part of the endgame PV, I would love if Guild Wars 2 did that here. So if they decide to prove me wrong on this, I will be very, very happy. So I want to preface it with that. The second thing that I want to say here, though, is that there's kind of 2 things to unpack here. Again, the whole sliding scale example, right? It's like Final Fantasy released a lot. But just because Final Fantasy released a lot does not mean that Guild Wars 2 released nothing, right? That's kind of like point number 1. And I think point number 2 is the development cycle of these 2 games is very different. And I don't think it's a very fair comparison to compare them when one of the games has had a history of already being very consistent. In other words, they're already at the point where they can continue this development cycle because that's already been well established. Whereas Guild Wars 2 right now, I think, is in the point of establishing that development cycle, the iterative design process that we've mentioned many, many times in this conversation already, right? It's like the idea of pushing out something, realize that maybe they don't understand it as well as they need to. So then they need to hire developers, hire whoever it is. Community management, I think we can all here agree, has not really been the best for the game. So it's very clear that that's something that they also have to bring up to speed, right? So it's like, I don't think it's fair to compare a game with a very established development cycle already with a game that is still trying to polish that. Is that necessarily a good thing, right? Because again, you are a consumer, you are going to be judged on your product and everything. Of course, right? That I think that is a very, very fair criticism of the game, is that it doesn't already have these systems in place so that the game can continue to thrive, especially at the very, very high end level. I think that is a very, very fair criticism. However, I do also think, again, since the release of EOD, the amount of content that we've gotten in the past 2 years with EOD is more than the past 6 years combined. I think that is also worth looking at.
But if you take the actual expansion, and I mean, okay, so you can add the expansion into the level of the content, but outside of that, what content have we gotten? We got one strike.
Let's refocus this. Let's go ahead and let's talk about what's actually going on here, right? I actually completely agree with both of you. That's right, guys. I am the moderate, guys. That's me. I'm a centrist here. I'm a radical centrist, in fact. Yeah, this is completely true. I think that it's certainly true that Guild Wars 2 has a very, very serious lack of content, especially when you stack it up with other games. I think it's absolutely true that part of the reason why you don't have a lot of people in the end game, right, who are spending a lot of money, is because there isn't that much for them to play compared to other titles. That's absolutely true. However, on the other side of this, yeah, the reason why this content, this lack of content, it's not aimed at like trolling. They're not going, and I think this is why the DOOMER conversation is super hard to have, because I think there's always this idea that there's like a malice involved, right? It's like a personal attack. No, ArenaNet aren't trolling and saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be really funny if we released no content for a whole year?" Ooh. No, obviously that's not what's going on here, right? The company is undergoing like major internal restructuring. They have a lot of difficulty with consistency. They've had a lot of difficulty with actually deciding what they want for the game, right? And if we go really full history, Guild Wars 2 was a world versus world PvP game. Then it was a raid game. Then it was a story game. Then it was Icebrood Saga. And then it was, okay, now we're doing Grouch. Now it's Grouch, right? There's a lot of different ideas that have been kind of been thrown about all over the place. So yeah, and that was what I was getting at when I was talking about like why I haven't made a video that says, hey, should you play Guild Wars 2? It's because honestly, I'm not even sure if I know the answer to that question yet. We don't know yet. That's what we're going to find out, in my opinion, in 2023, right? We're going to see what it looks like. Is this it, guys? Is this finally the year of Guild Wars 2 where everything actually works, right? When it's no longer a bumpy, chaotic ride where one group of players gets everything and everyone else goes out to starve. Because you know what? Let me go ahead and drop you a little meme here as well. Bear in mind, guys, when raids were really, really active at the start of HOT, right? Just think about this. Everyone else is kind of getting the shaft, right? Like a lot of other players were actually really dry on content, right? Especially the more the open world players, right? And story-driven players. It was a lot of raids and not much else. So there's never been this moment where ArenaNet has been able to correctly nail a development plan for all areas of the game. And that's what they're attempting to do now, which is very exciting, I think. With the balance updates, with strike missions being reused, right, from the story, and then having difficulty settings so they're accessible as well, right? This is what's good. Alliance is making a world versus order, you know, a fresh lick of paint to make people excited about the game mode again. Like, this is what I think. This is why I'm an optimist, right? You know, this is why I definitely, at the end of the day, you know, I'm on Team Emmy here a little bit. You know, I am a believer.
Not when you were fighting me this whole tea time. I've been trying to take words out of your mouth.
Oh, God. Look, and I hope it's successful. At the end of the day, the reason that I even met you two is because I love the game. I've spent, I don't know, 22,000 hours or something in the game. You don't get to that level by hating a video game. I don't care what Doomer says this game is garbage or I hate this game. If that Doomer has over a few thousand hours, then they loved the game at some point. You just don't spend that kind of time on something without having a love for it. I want to play the game again. I just don't feel like I need them to show me something. I need them to give me a reason to play again. I don't want to go back to the same 7 raid wings. HTCM was cool and great. I reinstalled, I did it. I was in a prog group for a month. I got my kill. And then I just sat there. I'm like, okay, do I go back to killing QTP endlessly again and Doom endlessly again, which is great. But once you've done it a few thousand times, it's you just kind of get over it. Some people, not everybody, and if you continue to enjoy it, then great. But we need something more, and that's what they don't have a pattern of showing us when we're going to get that something more. And I mean, maybe we get the roadmap on Tuesday, and maybe I'm going to eat my own words, but I just have a hard time believing that they are going to be able to make up for 9 years of habits
I think
based
okay,
off of
this is
one flip of a switch when EOD launched and they had some structural changes, because this isn't the first structural change they've had.
yeah, okay. I think if it's okay, I might kind of just voice my thoughts here. I don't know if this is entirely related to what you're saying, but I think another really big thing is I think a lot of people are holding this game to the same expectations that they're holding other games, when I think that expectation is not entirely fair. I think this is like kind of in general the vibe that I've been getting, right? It's like the idea that because the game isn't releasing things to match my specific pace that I am consuming the content, then I think the game is not a good game. When I think this is kind of not true, right? Is because it's like you said, the game has an open door. You are by design allowed to leave the game, take a break from it, and then come back to consume more content in the future. Whether or not there is content in the future, that's the separate discussion that we already had. But I think the point here is that I think a lot of people see the game, and this is a bit disjointed because I'm still trying to like figure out my thoughts on it. But the easiest way that I can look at or convey this is compare indie games and stuff, right? Is like obviously this is a little bit of an awkward comparison, but there are some indie games that are very experimental. They try out things, and because of that, their development cycle is fairly slow, and you can't really expect that much out of them because they are trying to do something new. And just maybe in general, they might just not be as good of a company, right? Like maybe they just don't have developers that are as competent. And then you might have like another indie game that was like made by a single person that was like absolutely fantastic and like gets you thousands of hours of gameplay, like, you know, like Stardew Valley, something like that. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think it's fair to hold both of these game companies to the exact same expectations. And I kind of want to like pull this analogy back to like Guild Wars 2 versus other MMOs and stuff, right? It's like I think a lot of people look at Guild Wars 2 and they think, this is going to be my only game. I'm going to put all of my time, all of my energy into here. But at the same time, while this is my only game, I'm going to give it the same amount of like pressure and expectation that I would give another game where that is already the established expectation. And I think, again, it's a bit awkward because like I'm there, right? It's like I also don't play any other MMOs. I would love if Guild Wars 2 had more like, you know, had a more solid development cycle, and if they were like, you know, released more content. Like I really, really want the game to succeed and everything, right? But at the same time, I like to think that I'm rational enough to understand that that might not be the goal of the company. Or it maybe historically that wasn't the goal. It might be the goal right now, but it's like we've said multiple times today, there's been a lot of internal leadership changes. Maybe that wasn't the goal of the game. Like 6 years ago. Maybe 6 years ago, they just wanted to milk the players for all of the money that they had, right? We don't know because we're not in the company. But now it's like they are changing the leadership. There is this new expectation that they are trying to establish. And I guess I just find it really unfair when people like don't recognize that.
But I mean, is it unfair to compare them to their competition?
I think yes and also no. It's fair to compare to competition, but Guild Wars 2 has always been like the MMO that told people like it's like the not like the other girls sort of MMOs, right? It's like that's always the expectation, is that they wanted to reinvent the gear treadmill, reinvent the holy trinity of like classes and stuff, have a larger focus on open world content. They have been trying to reinvent the wheel. That's why this MMO was created in the first place.
It's true.
It's like I think it's fair to compare, but at the same time, you have to understand that there's fundamental design differences when they were creating this MMO to when they were creating other more classic MMOs.
Yeah, I think understanding the context of the game is very important. But I do unfortunately think it's an unfortunate reality that, yeah, if you make an MMO, you are going to get compared to World of Warcraft. You are going to get compared to Final Fantasy. There's no way around that. Like the fairness of it, regrettably, doesn't really come into the conversation. I think, which you know, it kind of sucks, but that's just that's kind of the reality, right, of how it actually plays out. But I do wish that context was considered more, especially when it comes to, again, as you mentioned, like the tumultuous development cycle of
I want to interrupt just to address something that's happening in the chat right now. None of us think Guild Wars 2 is dying at all.
Yeah.
Saying it survived WoW, it will survive Final Fantasy. It's not a matter of survival. It's not like Guild Wars is like it's not dying. there's some old disgruntled people that have played the game for far too long that are leaving the game. That's what's happening. And we're trying to talk about why is that happening. The game's not dying, it's not dead, it still has hundreds of thousands of people playing it. It's just, and I used this word before we hopped on stream, I said it feels like it's stagnating, which some people could make the argument that is close to dying. And they're kind of at a crossroads. You know, they're sitting here where they did have these management and leadership changes. They did have this big expansion come out last year that did have a lot of hype behind it. They brought in strike missions. They brought in new balance, completely flipped the game upside down. They've got these promises of alliances and all kinds of things coming. And they're at a fork in a road. Either that goes really well or it doesn't, and it falls flat on their face and they fall back into old ways. And I think all three of us hope that it goes really well. I would like nothing more than to start playing Guild Wars 2 again and play that and Final Fantasy. But if it takes the other path, then they're in a precarious position where they could face another wave of Doomers. Or that wave of Doomers catches more people behind their cause isn't the right word, but essentially their cause, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with this. And I also want to address chat a little bit because some people are saying that it is dying, it's a slow death.
True.
Again, if you look back at the stats, that's just not true. Like there was like an earnings report that was literally released like a few weeks ago, and it showed that the earnings for 2022 was massive. And the developers have actively been saying that the player base has doubled since the release of EOD. It's like the game might not be growing at an exponential rate, even just like, let's say it's like a straight line, like a linear function, right? It's like, even then, like the slope might not be entirely like super, super high, but to say that it's on a negative trajectory is also completely false.
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps what people mean when they say that is probably the game is dying for them, right? Or the game, their area of the game is dying, which may well be true.
Could be true.
That could be true. And I think that this is another really sad thing about playing MMOs is that I think there is a point where the game is dead for you. Regardless of the actual health of the actual video game itself, there's going to be a point where like, okay, yeah, I'm not having fun anymore, right? Like that's
most MMOs don't have the advantage of, say, a game like The Witcher or Kingdom Hearts or something has, where there is a specifically designated start and an end point, and when the game's over, it's not like, and most people are going to play that and they're going to be like, man, I'm sad that I'm done with that journey. But in 5 years, 6 years, you can just come back and play it again. And you can kind of do that in an MMO. But in MMO, what ends up happening is you keep playing and doing the things in the game that you can until you get to the point where you have played so much that it's almost like burnout just takes over. And then you leave. A lot of people will leave an MMO with a salty taste in their mouth. And they'll just be like, I don't know. The last few months, I just have logged in and not known what to do. I've logged in for daily requirements, and that's basically it. And you don't get that with outside of the MMO genre. But at the end of the day, all video games are, for the most part, they're temporary. There's a few that stand the test of time, like Pong and Tetris. But the games that we played 15, 20 years ago, most of us have fond memories of them, but we're not playing them again. And, maybe we would pick them up for a little bit here and there. But, when you play a game, you kind of go into that game agreeing consciously or subconsciously that the game's going to have an end. It's going to die for you at some point. It's not bad for a game to die. It's just sometimes sad.
Yeah. And I want to add here, because like this sounds like super depressing and everything, but at the same time, you also have to think, just because the game is dead for you does not mean that it's dead for other people, right? Like in the time that I have been streaming, which is, consistently like about a year now or so, I've already have people that said like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of burning out the game. It's not for me. And literally just this last weekend, the reason why we didn't have this debate last weekend is because I had the Heart of Thorns monthly map completion train. I've already convinced 2 or 3 people to give endgame PvE a try, and we got them their strike mission turtle, and now they're like, wow, that was a lot of fun. I installed DPS or Arc DPS because like you recommended and you guys are doing so much damage. I want to kind of learn how to do that and stuff, right? It's like there's a whole new wave of players that's always continuously entering the game. And those new players, I think they're on for a really, really fantastic journey, right? It's like they might love Guild Wars 2 as much as you loved it when you first started. And I think this is, again, I'm going to bring it back to the Doomer versus... Yeah, it's like I'm going to bring it back to the whole Doomers versus Bloomers. The reason why I'm so fed up with Doomers is because they're stopping those new players from enjoying it. I didn't want to bring. I might not bring it up. I'll just kind of like I have
Bring it up.
screenshots, but I won't bring it. I won't
Bring it
the
up.
actual screenshots. But there was a streamer, you guys probably already know who I'm referring to, who has a fairly large Doomer community, and
Snub.
someone came into the chat and said, "Hey, is this game worth playing?" And clearly they were very into like, you know, the combat system already. They were very clearly into like the the rating style and everything. But in general, the chat was very depressing about it. They were like, yeah, there's been like no new content. Like, don't even bother to install it. It's like not worth playing. Like, it's really bad for veteran players. And in my head, I'm just thinking like, are you serious? This is a new player who likely has thousands of potential hours of gameplay that they're going to love. Like, why are you shitting on this for them? Like this is like the big issue that I have with Doomers is that it's not about making the Doomers happy anymore. It's the fact that these people are actively going out of their way to prevent other people from being happy. And just as an FYI, it's not Sneb. So
So here's where this is where going like the defining the Doomer. You have people who aren't able to step out of their own perspective. The game has nothing for me to do in my perspective. That doesn't mean that it has nothing to do for everyone. I don't know how many raids I've done. I can't raid anymore. Someone who's never touched the game, they've got thousands of hours ahead of them. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna agree with you that the chat of that streamer, you know, whoever it was and whatever their chat was, I mean, they were probably a little out of line. But like, it also is. If you kind of take a step back and look at what they're saying and realize that while they're being extreme about the way they're saying it, they're kind of saying, well, yeah, I mean, this game is going to be good to a point. But at some point, you're going to run into a point where you're going to outplay.
No. Let's be honest here, right? Like the concerns that you might have about content release schedule is like totally irrelevant for a new player. That's what Emmy's saying it, and she's totally correct, of course.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is absolutely no reason to bring up the game's somewhat slow content release schedule to a new player. Like, because it will take them literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours to actually encounter that difficulty. So, because you've got to think about the context here. Even if that's technically true, if you say to a new player, oh yeah, this game has somewhat slow content releases, you're kind of priming them with the idea that the game doesn't have a lot of content. Whereas in reality, that is not exactly a very good description, right? Let's be honest, that's not exactly an honest description of what's going on here, right? You have so much to do as a new player that even if you're like a mega raider, right? You know, oh, I'm coming from Final Fantasy, I'm ready to blast, I'm ready to pump. Even if you are that type of player, it's going to take you a very, very long time to get through everything, right? To progress all of the raids, all the stratagems, all the challenges, all that kind of stuff. It's going to take you a very, very long time. So yeah,
I also want... Yeah. Oh, sorry. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, yeah, you could maybe say if you're looking for that ultra hardcore raid experience, then Guild Wars 2 is maybe not the game. If you like Mythic WoW or Ultimates, okay, yeah, sure, there probably isn't a lot of that, right, in Guild Wars 2. But I definitely wouldn't for new players. I think it's not a good idea to bring up that. I think it's misrepresenting what's actually going on there, and it's going to misrepresent it's going to negatively prime the new player to the experience that they're going to have when they actually play the game.
Yes, and I think that I want to add the disclaimer here that the streamer in question actually I think did a pretty good job of like reprimanding their chat. They told them like, yeah, no, that's true, but like for a new player, you still have like thousands of hours. I definitely want to give credit.
Oh, it was me.
No, it wasn't you. Yeah. I don't want to name names or anything. But
Teapot, it was me on a secret stream.
I mean, this could be anyone. This could have been anyone at this point. Yeah, right? Yeah.
I don't know who it is. Maybe it was me. But
plot twist.
It was Emmy. Oh shit. Yeah.
Anyway. The point that I want to make, though, is just that I do think that this subset of players, I think especially the ones that are very active on social media, it's not at the point where it's like, you know, they have justifiable like anger at the game anymore. And it's like I think the big reason why I wanted to have this discussion in the first place is because I actually think it's happening a lot. Like I actively have people who come into my stream saying, hey, I read an MMO article that Guild Wars 2 is dying. Is that true? And I have to like sit there for 5 minutes. You know, like that meme with the guy with like all the red lines behind him, like looks like a crazy person. That's literally me every single time someone comes into my chat. And I don't think that this is like this is not just like a one-off situation. This is happening pretty much every single time I go live, maybe multiple times I go live, where people come in here and they're like, hey, I really want to give this game a try because I heard it had good reviews, but then I went to insert social media here and everybody said that it's like, you know, the game is dying or like all of this stuff. And I think that's a really, really big problem. I don't know. It's like, again, I might just be biased because I interact with new players a lot, especially new players that have not yet reached. I say it's like, you know, they're kind of at like a cornerstone in their GW2 career, right? It's like people who are right now fairly casual about the game, but are considering giving the game more time and, again, potentially more money, right? It's like I interact with people at that point a lot through my like map completion trains, Heart of Thorns trains, raid trainings. I do a lot of community outreach and like the trading posts or overflow, like, you know, Discord communities, that sort of thing. And it's a sentiment that I don't know if it's just because I'm getting exposed to it more, but I see it more often. Whereas I feel like, again, this is probably a byproduct of the fact that when EOD was released, there was a lot of new content for people to chew on, right? So because of that, it kind of quieted down the doomers a little bit. But in just 3 months since they said that they would release like the roadmap and stuff, and by the way, mind you, they said that the roadmap would take time to release. They never even gave us an actual end date for it. They were just like, yeah, we're working on it right now, just as an FYI. And people took that and blew it up so much to the point where now I am having to deal with like people that are concerned that the game is dying on a daily basis. This is I think the cornerstone of why I'm so upset with like the doomer community right now, is because I see it as an active detriment to the things that I'm trying to do for the game.
Yeah, and I think there is definitely a responsibility in terms of community management here as well, on the side of the content creators, right, for sure. I think that there is a bit of responsibility on us to, you know, keep the conversation at least a little bit healthy, right? In the areas that we control, we should try and keep it a little bit healthy and prevent it from going down, you know, the dark path of complete doom and gloom. Because realistically, that's not helping anyone, right? If you really are that doom and gloom, the only thing you should be doing is uninstalling, right? Like, I would always give this advice to anyone. If there's something in your life that just genuinely brings you nothing but pain and suffering, then yeah, flat out, do not engage with that whatsoever, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely experience this frustration a lot. I really do. I really do. There are a lot of people who watch my stream who just despise the game. Okay, and it's like, why are you here? Just go away. But maybe I should ban people. You know, I don't like banning people. I have almost nobody banned on my Twitch channel. But maybe I should actually ban people a little bit. The only problem is that I really don't like doing that. I don't like banning people. Maybe it's timeouts instead. Yeah, we've got to be a little more gentle, I suppose. But yeah, it's a very frustrating thing that I experience because I just want to try and make the best of it in some way. Like, I think that critique is fine, and complaining about the game, I think it's important, and you should do it sometimes. But in a way, it matters where that comes from, right? Like, if you're complaining about the game because you want it to be better and you're enjoying it and you're a part of the community, right, and you're engaged with the game, I think that's absolutely fine. But if you're complaining about the game and you don't even play the game and you hate the game, then that's a very different thing. Even the exact same messaging, the intent behind those two those two different people, that's a really big difference, right? And I think it's important that we try to keep it more on the critiquing the game in a reasonable way, and we actually do want the best for the game. We actually rather like the game. I think that's pretty important stuff. Yeah,
people are going to keep doing it, though. We know people are going to keep doing it.
I do think, though, that this is I completely understand this frustration here, because I have this a lot as well. And I think this is, to kind of draw an analogy to explain what I'm trying to get at here, it's really hard to get people to share positive experiences. It's very easy to get people to share negative experiences. And the analogy I would actually draw here is the raid scene. So I would say that the narrative around the raid scene, like group no, actually not even raids, group content, any group content, fractals, DRMs, strikes, raids, whatever. The narrative is very negative. Oh, it's toxic. Oh, it's horrible. Oh, it's impossible to get into. Oh, the content's hard. Oh, it sucks, right? That's the narrative. But the thing is, why? Well, it's because players who have bad experiences speak up, And the vast majority of players who have overwhelmingly positive experiences don't speak up. I think a really good example of this would actually be Sneb's guild, Skane Gang, actually, right? Sneb has literally 90 statics or so, raiding and doing strike content, right?
It's close to 100 now.
It's a huge amount. It's a ridiculous amount of players. Like straight up, that is unironically a large portion of the raid scene, just flat. I'm not even going to say EUNA. That's a relevant amount of people, right? It is. But the thing is, they're having fun. So they're not making a Reddit post. They're not complaining on the forums. They're not spamming tweets at Emmy, right, all the time, right? And saying, oh, I had so much fun, right? Okay, that's the problem. And this is why combating these narratives is incredibly difficult, right? It's because people who are having fun don't say anything, right? They just go about their business and have fun. They don't, they don't do this. And it's one of the frustrations that I really have is that I really want to change this narrative around group content, that it's fun and it's welcoming. Actually, there are ways to get into it. And yes, there are people who really want you in the community. We don't want to, just kick you out of our groups because you're new and you're a noob. No, that's not the case. It's not the majority of cases. But the problem is that the narrative paints it that way because, of course, players who are disgruntled and do have negative experiences speak up, right? And that's not to invalidate those experiences. Believe me, there are plenty of negative experiences you can have in raids. Sometimes I get kicked and it makes me very sad. Seriously, I've joined a group, I just insta-kicked. They go, it's Teapot. Fuck you. Boom, kicking. Unlucky. You hate to see that. I mean, it happens.
You didn't
guys.
ping your KP, Teapot.
Didn't ping KP. I'm out. I'm done.
Where's your KP.me?
Destroyed. These things happen, right? They do. But at the end of the day, it is important to, to try to communicate the actual reality of the situation a little bit better around the, to communicate around the narrative. You got to acknowledge the concerns and try to mitigate them, of course. But it definitely really sucks. And I think it's the same thing with the narrative around Guild Wars 2 as well. I think in general, things are pretty okay. There are definitely big issues, but the game is a lot of fun right now, I think. There are a lot of really good things about the game, and it is very difficult to channel that positive narrative. I think a really good example, actually, is actually the narrative around the time of Harvest Temple Challenge Mode. I think Harvest Temple Challenge Mode absolutely kind of got overshadowed by how bad the balance patch was at the time, which really sucked in my opinion. But that's why, I mean, I hate to say it, ArenaNet have got to play around that, right? This goes back to our conversation earlier. I completely agree with Emmy here that it's very unfair to characterize the game as like complete trash when they release a lot of good things and like a few bad things. But on the other hand, I've got to say, ArenaNet have to play around that, right? In a way, that's not something that we can really fix. It's not on the community to fix that. I think ArenaNet has to do that. And yeah, that's a lot of pressure on them. But then again, they're the ones getting paid, right? So it is on them, actually. To an extent, anyway.
Yeah. Maybe in the future, balance patches the same day that you release incredibly challenging flagship content. Probably not the greatest idea.
Yeah, I do want to add here though. I know that was like a really bad thing, and I remember saying this myself because again, haha, I'm a developer. You want to know what my team actively told us? One of the first things they told us when I joined the team: don't release content on Fridays, or don't deploy pipelines on Fridays because you don't want to deal with it over the weekend.
It's a risky business.
So the fact that ArenaNet literally put out the balance patch and all of the notes on the Friday and then ignored everybody for the next 2 days because it was the weekend, because they're normal human beings and they don't want to work on the weekends, was a big mistake. But I think, okay, again, speaking a little bit on their behalf, yeah, they probably shouldn't have done that in the first place, but I think they learned from that. I think now they give it a lot of time, even between the time where they release the notes and then the time where they put it into the game. There's a much bigger window there now compared to before, right? And again, I want to point out in ANET's defense, I think that they have made some changes that were fairly radical. And I think genuinely speaking, if they put it into the game, it wouldn't have been terrible, but it would have made some people upset. But after hearing that it would have made those people upset, they weighed the positives and the negatives and actually reverted changes. They compromised on them. And that's only possible because they included that 1 week time frame where people can digest the information and provide feedback before it goes live in the game, which I think, again, is a major, major win in ANET's book that has only started happening in the past 2 years. That has never happened before EOD. So, yes. But anyways, yes, any budding developers in here, don't do anything on a Friday. Fridays are like, go write documentation or something. Don't release anything on Friday or you're going to regret it.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you know, as players of a video game, the game devs are actually like our slaves. They're supposed to do everything that we say.
True.
SMH my head.
Very true.
Yeah.
Have we gone through all of it? Has everyone got any more notes left over?
I mean, I have other notes of stuff that they could add. That's like
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit that would be benefits and be able to kind of, shift the focus away from Doomer things that already exists in the game in some form. Like, how about player housing? Let's maybe develop that a little bit.
Oh, dude, that would have been so cool.
We have a home instance. Or, hey, how about some expansion guild missions? Things like that. You don't have like that. I mean, you just have to design like a little meta event and a race, or maybe a puzzle or something.
Yeah.
One for HOT, one for POF, one for EOD. Something like that.
Yeah. Turning back a little bit to the Doomer side, I am really sad that EOD didn't have like this flagship change with it, right? It's like Heart of Thorns had gliding, Path of Fire had mounts, EOD had fishing, which while it is very fun, it's a very good casual way, and it's also a pretty good source of money and everything, it didn't fundamentally change the way that you interacted with the game. So I do think that that was a little bit of a letdown, but I do want to also say that I appreciate what EOD represented, and the big thing that I think it represented for me is that they're taking the game more seriously. It's not just a game about new content, it's about fixing old content so that they can continue to push out new content in the future. So just want to add that there. But yes, I think, dude, I would love player housing. If you've ever seen me play like survival games and stuff, I will sit there for like 20 hours just designing my base.
I mean, player housing, it's like, it's endless hours of entertainment for a player who just loves to move things around. I didn't think I would care about it, and then I bought a house in Final Fantasy, and I have probably spent like 100 hours in the past like 3 weeks just moving paintings around on the walls. Like, they could do that. You could collect the little cats around the world already. Like, and then you can have friends visit your house. And like, it's not content to play, but it's like a waste of time. And it's like free gem store content for revenue. Hey, you want some decorations for your house? Some new decorations. You can get some in game. You can get some on the gem store. That kind of stuff. It's such low hanging fruit, and the instances are already there. Just you'll benefit it. You'll put a little bit more effort into it. I know it's probably something that's so like not even on their table or so low on their radar, because it's not like actionable content like living story and that kind of stuff is. But like little things like that could be enough to bring a Doomer back to the game, and for just enough time to then be like, oh, let me pull up in the LFG, let's see what's there. Or let me pop into EBG and just, oh, there's a commander tag. I'm gonna go run around for a little bit because I used to love doing that years ago, and now all of a sudden they're hooked again. You just need that one little thing to bring them back.
I really do hope that they continue to do that. I mean, like I said, I want to like say again, I mean, the roadmap is coming up, and I really hope that it turns out okay. Honestly, I will probably be turning off Reddit and Twitter and all social media when that drops.
And what if it's really good?
Like,
it could be really good. It sounds like you're a Doomer. Really... It sounds like you think it's gonna be trash.
You guys know where to find me. It's Emmy's Discord.
I actually okay. Spicy take. I think it's just gonna be good. I don't think it's gonna be amazing. I don't think it's gonna be bad. I think it's gonna give us an idea of what's gonna happen in 2023, and I think that's gonna be really good. What I'm worried about is that I'm going to like it, and then on social media, people are gonna tell me that I'm wrong for liking it. That's what I'm scared of. So, yeah,
that is good content. Yeah. Okay. I think that just kind of wrapped things up, though. I think we've squeezed the lemon here. I think I'm not sure if we got anything else to say really on this topic. It was an interesting one. It was an interesting one. I found this very unexpected. In fact, I didn't see this one. I had no idea where it was going to go, and I was surprised. But I mean, I think it was somewhat interesting anyway. A quick thing here, actually, guys. Let's actually get this going here. Okay, yeah, before we start, we've got about 10 minutes left for a full flame war. That's going to happen.
Oh my god.
But real quick here, guys. Let's actually just get a bit of a chat poll here. Okay, gamers. Let's see, what will be, if you guys are really in favor of the game, you're a full bloomer, you love Guild Wars 2, the future is bright, please put Rat Jam in the chat. However, If it's full Doom, it's over. The game ends now. Please put Doomga in the chat.
Oh my god.
Let's see what we're gonna get here. Let's see the situation. We've got a lot of people in the chat. Looks like a lot of rat jams.
A lot of rat jams.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes the Doomgas.
Oh no.
The Doomgas fight back.
What if we had like a Doom jam? So it's like for people in the middle.
Yeah.
I have an idea.
A Doom jam?
Aizza jam if you're in the middle.
Yeah. If you're in the middle, Aizza jam
God.
in the chat. Let's make that happen. There we go. So if you're a centrist like me, I guess.
I can't believe they caught me doing that. They saw me. We were at an ad break, or not an ad break. We were taking a 10-minute break between rounds. There's some EOD music playing, and I was just kind of, bobbing my head. And whoever was in control of the stream just goes, "Ooh, let's see what'll happen if I just push this button." Showed the whole chat me, just kind of.
I just got reminded actually of a story. Aizza once confessed on stream that the first time he quit Guild Wars 2 was when he got lost in Lornar's Pass at level 10, died to a level 20 mower, and then uninstalled the game.
I didn't have enough money to waypoint or repair, because repairs costed you money in those days. Didn't have a guild, nothing. I had nothing to lean on. I was out.
You had no friends.
I had no friends at the time. Yeah. And I uninstalled the game. I was like, this game is shit. Terrible.
Yeah.
And then I saw the ad for, I think, Fractals. I think the ad for Fractals brought me back.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the mower did not defeat you for long. You eventually rejoined.
No, I went back and I killed the mower. I slayed the beast.
All right, okay.
My mortal
it's time to wrap things up here, gamers. This was content. I don't really have a good follow up. I'll tell you what, Emmy, if you have any closing thoughts, this is the time for your closing statement, and also to sell out a little bit as well. It's time.
Yeah, I think a closing statement. I think just quick summary of everything that we talked about here. I think Aizza is definitely on the more critical side of the game, and then I am definitely on the more give the game the benefit of the doubt sort of side. And I think we both had really good points today, right? It's like I think we brought up a lot of things that genuinely needed to be discussed that hadn't been discussed before. And I think we were able to give the voice to a lot of people on both sides of the conversation, which I think is really good. And I know that there were a couple of developers in here that were kind of listening. So I really hope that they, take some of the things that we said and incorporate it into their development cycle. So that would be really, really good. But I think at the end of the day, if you're not having fun with the game, it is okay to walk away. It is okay to play a different game at the same time. It's okay to shelve it and then come back when there's more stuff to do. I think that is like the big point that I've always tried to make to people, is that if this is your main game, that's fantastic. If you play this game with another game at the same time, that's also fantastic. If you only play a different game and you don't want to play Guild Wars 2, that's honestly fine too. Just don't be a dick. Don't go on social media saying nasty things to other people. Don't actively go out of your way to make other people's time in the game a bad one. That's all. So, yes.
Absolutely. Okay. And well, look, I don't. Oh no, I've expressed my bias here. I did not add Aizza to ! Hosts. Oh dear. Oh
it's
dear.
Okay. All my daily streams, everybody's gonna miss them now.
Yeah. No one's
Listen,
I
mean, on that note, there is a pinned message in a Discord I'm in that is me saying when Wing 8 releases, I install and stream for a month straight.
And there you go. That's all the motivation ArenaNet truly need, I guess.
So
to make that happen.
maybe I come back.
Wait, this is a. Have you seen this? Look what Zlint is linking, and this is pretty big actually.
This is fake.
What is this image? What? Explain this, Emmy.
What is this? What is this?
Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's
Sylvari. Shitty
Photoshop. That is all.
Yeah, I mean you can clearly see it's not.
Yeah, true.
The text is too low here, right? It does not align correctly. But still, convincing. That could potentially convince some people. But anyway, make sure that you follow Emmy, you follow Aizza on Twitter, and you follow this stream as well, and watch all the TeaTimes. You let us know what you think if you're watching on YouTube, if this even makes it to YouTube, okay? Because honestly, this was a clown fiesta. But I hope you enjoyed it, gamers. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Follow everyone here. Subscribe everywhere. Like everywhere. Leave comments everywhere. And join the discussion and let us make the conversation around Guild Wars 2 more productive than ever before, because that's what we're here for. All right, gamers, thanks for watching. We're out of here. Take it easy.